Hi there, this is Ron Myers and I'm one of the directors of the consulting room. I've been really looking forward to discussing the subject of stress and the effects on our eating habits with Myers, who's one of my very entrepreneurial daughters. Hi, Maddie.
Hello.
Maddie's got a master's in human nutrition and is a registered associate nutritionist with the Association for Nutrition. And she's also the contributor on a wide variety of subjects relating to nutrition and aesthetics in our consulting room magazine. However, one of the subjects that Maddie is really most passionate about is people's relationship with food and how this is affected in particular by stress and also body image. And it occurred to me that as many business owners and their families are currently living, working and eating together in a higher stress environment than normal, I thought this would be really a subject worth exploring in more depth. So, hi Maddie, welcome, and how are things up in Aberdeen today?
Chilly, as always, but we're managing.
Great. So Maddie, I know that we all as a family really enjoy eating food and normally see it as a pleasurable experience. However, that clearly isn't the case for everyone. And I know that you help people who struggle with their relationship with food for a number of different reasons, as I said, including those related to body image. But how does stress, and in particular more stressful periods in our life, affect how we eat?
So that's a really good question. And I think it's a very kind of, it's a really individual response. So people tend to respond to stress in different ways. So for some people, stressful times can mean that they eat less because of the kind of hormonal changes that go on in our body and the physiological response to stress. But for other people, they tend to eat more. So people kind of fit in one of those categories typically. But kind of, if we think about right now, especially if you're responsible for kind of feeding your household, if you're the one who's in charge of, meal planning, grocery shopping, the kind of ritual of eating can just be another thing that kind of compounds stress right now. So as well as kind of the stressful period affecting how we eat, kind of how we eat also affects our stress levels as well.
Okay.
Be one of those other things to do on your to-do list, which can be really difficult. And kind of stress also has knock-on consequences for us. So lots of people, if they're struggling with stress, that can really affect how they sleep as well, which can influence your appetite. So lots of people say that when they're more tired, they kind of tend to crave more carbohydrate foods. Yeah. Which makes perfect biological sense because our body's kind of looking for that kind of quick energy source. So there's kind of lots of different things going on, but yeah, I would definitely say that it's often a very individual thing.
Okay, fine. And if people are feeling stressed at this point, what are your kind of top tips for trying to eat well especially during self-isolation?
So I think the first thing to really kind of drive home is to just be really kind to yourself. Like obviously none of us have been through a global pandemic before, so it's perfectly normal if you're feeling a little bit more stressed in general, if you're struggling, especially in terms of food. And particularly now, you might need to kind of reframe what a balanced diet looks like. If it's kind of harder to get hold of certain foods, and you might have different priorities, like food might not be like top of your list of things to do right now, and that's perfectly okay. So I would really encourage anyone to kind of drop the perfect eating mindset. There's no such thing as a perfect diet anyway, so kind of loosening up on that can really help people.
Okay.
I would also say kind of maybe try and like broaden out the types of foods that you eat, and particularly I know processed foods in particular get a really bad rep. But they can be really useful, and they're super convenient, and oftentimes if we're talking about things like canned foods or frozen foods, they can be just as nutritious or even sometimes more nutritious than fresh food. So kind of not kind of shutting down different food groups and different types of foods, that can be helpful.
Yeah.
I would also encourage, if you are one of those people who's responsible for kind of doing the grocery shopping, making lists before you go, and having a look at what foods you already have in the house. So having a look through the cupboards and the fridge and the freezer and kind of making note. And then that means that when you go shopping, you're not kind of just blindly choosing foods. You know what foods you need in order to make a few easy meals that week. And also one thing that I kind of always incorporate when I'm talking to my clients is mindful eating, and kind of making ensure that you're really in the eating moment, trying to connect kind of your mind and your body and really being present with your food, and also slowing it down. That can be really helpful, so that you can really get the most pleasure and satisfaction out of your food. You can really savor it, and that can really help also to just enjoy food, because food should be enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting. I think that's one thing that I probably learned from you as well, because I can eat food anytime, anywhere. And I'm kind of more of a functional eater.
Yeah.
But I must admit, actually just taking that time to kind of, as you say, sort of sit down and really enjoy every mouthful of it.
Yeah.
And especially for us as well, because I sit down, as you know, with my mum, sorry, your mum, my wife, every night, and we sit across the table from each other. We don't sit it with our laps on our laps watching television. I think that also helps as well. To eat with the family, and something that we've always done whenever we can do.
Definitely, yeah. Like, always encourage people to remove distractions when eating.
Yeah.
So okay. Like not having your phone, not reading a book, kind of if you're with someone else, yeah, sure, share it with them, have a conversation, but definitely like turning off the TV and putting your phone to one side can be really helpful to increase mindful eating and pleasure from food.
Brilliant. Okay. I know one of the things we discussed a number of times is kind of emotional eating. Can you explain what that is and whether or not it's a bad thing?
Sure. So emotional eating simply is kind of eating in the absence of physical hunger. So you're kind of eating for comfort. If you're feeling a bit stressed and anxious, sometimes we do turn to food. Mm-hmm. And I think, especially nowadays, emotional eating gets a really bad rep, and I've seen loads of guides online about, you know, how to never emotionally eat again, but I actually think that compared to lots of other coping mechanisms, it's really not that bad. Like, we need food to survive. Mm-hmm. We couldn't cope without food, clearly. It's a biological need. And I also try and when I'm working with my clients, I try and get them to kind of reframe how they think about emotional eating. So really, it can be a gift in disguise. So often, if we're kind of feeling the drive to maybe eat food, even when we know we're not physically hungry, it can be the kind of first sign that maybe we need a little bit more self-care. Maybe there's something going on that needs a bit more attention, because when we experience more kind of stress, we need to be doing more to kind of counter that. It's all about kind of getting a balance of stress and coping mechanisms. So the only time I would say, though, that emotional eating is potentially not so great is when it's the only way we have of coping with difficult times in our life. Mm-hmm. So even though it's something that lots of us do turn to, and that kind of comes from how we're raised as children, oftentimes parents will kind of use food as soothing and as comfort things for their children. If it's the only thing we're doing, they could potentially not be so great, because often we're drawn to kind of what I would term fun foods when we're feeling particular emotions, which in turn can lead people to feel more guilty if they're kind of eating those foods, and especially overeating. But again, at this kind of time, lots of our usual coping mechanisms that we have, like, you know, getting a hug from your friends and that, like that, we don't have access to. So it does make sense that we are turning potentially to food more.
Okay, so having that little piece of chocolate when you really feel like it, like I do, it's not a bad thing, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. And and you're right. I mean, it does kind of, I suppose, as long as you don't eat the whole chocolate bar, it does make you feel a little bit better. As long as you say, you don't kind of feel guilty about it afterwards. I think that's the key thing, isn't it?
That is absolutely key, because the only time we should ever feel bad about food is if we've stolen it.
Okay. So Maddie, what else can we use to cope with emotions and stress right now?
So I would say, firstly, try and name what it is that you're feeling, because sometimes it can feel really uncomfortable if we're feeling some form of emotion, but we're not really sure what it is. So giving it a name can really help to take the power out of it and to give you some self-awareness around what you're feeling, and then you can use that to kind of guide what it is that you might need right now. And then I would say, ask yourself if you're hungry, because oftentimes we think that we're emotionally eating, but actually we're just hungry. So checking in with our physical sensations of hunger. So if you are hungry, then just eat. And then beyond that, kind of working on ways that work for you to help you kind of cope. So beyond food, really. One practical thing that I can say that everyone can do right now with just a piece of paper and a pen is to make a list of the 5 fives. So these are the 5 people you can pick up the phone to talk things through with, 5 ways you can relax, 5 places you can go to kind of take a minute just to yourself. That might be a little bit difficult right now for some people. Even just, you know, going for a short walk or going to your bedroom, so where you can kind of close the door and just be by yourself. The 5 things you can say to yourself to kind of pick yourself up, whatever little mantra it is that works for you. So, you know, like, I can do this, or I've got this. Finally, 5 ways that you can distract yourself, because sometimes we don't have kind of the ability to kind of tackle our emotions head on, and that's also okay. So that's just something that kind of everyone can do right now with nothing special, and this is just something that you can go to whenever you're feeling those emotions, so you can just have it right there.
Fantastic. That's really useful information. Thanks. I tend to use the distraction one. If I can keep myself busy, then I don't really think very much about stuff. So I think at this point in time, probably a lot of people do that. But that's been really. Sorry. Yes. Go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say, and like the distraction side of it is fine. Like you might still need to eventually kind of tackle it, but like if you don't have the capability to right in that second, that's also fine.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, Maddie. I think I hope that's been useful for our listeners. I think you're giving some really great information across there at a time when I think, you know, we've all got to eat, and you know, and when people are stressed and all these sort of situations going on, I think there can be more issues around food than maybe in normal times. So if any of our listeners kind of need any additional help or advice or personal help and support, is there anything else that you could do to help them, Maddie?
Yeah, absolutely. So I offer kind of one-to-one online consultations for anyone who kind of has specific concerns around eating, or even just kind of wanting to manage a health concern that they have, but wants to do it in a way that's really kind of accepting of themselves and of their body. So I always offer free discovery calls, and that's for anyone who wants to kind of discuss their individual needs further. You can sign up to those through my website, which is nondietnutrition.co.uk, and there you can kind of, you can schedule in a phone call where I give you a call and we just have a short chat. And then if you kind of feel then that you'd like to have some more in-depth conversations about your individual situation, then I offer full-length consultations after that.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Maddie. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy. You've probably got a number of other things to do today, but have a nice weekend, and I'm sure I'll speak to you soon again anyway.
Absolutely. No, thank you for asking me to do this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye.